482. That is not a phone number. That is not a street address. That is not a dollar amount. That is how many human beings were murdered in Washington, D.C. in a single calendar year. In a city of 600,000 people, 1 out of every 1,200 residents was killed. Not robbed, not assaulted, killed. And D.C. was not even the worst. This list is about 10 black neighborhoods where the kill count was so high that the numbers stopped making sense, where police stopped responding, where ambulances refused to enter after dark, where mailmen would not deliver, where pizza drivers drew a red line on a map and told their managers they would rather lose their job than cross it. These are the murder capitals. Number 10 to number 1. Every body count is verified. Number 10. Magnolia Projects, New Orleans. 421 murders citywide in 1994. 86 murders per 100,000 people. No American city has ever matched that number. Not before. Not since. The highest per capita kill rate in the recorded history of urban America. The Magnolia Projects sat in the middle of it. Birdman grew up here. Juvenile grew up here. Turk grew up here. Before cash money records existed, these three were children dodging bullets inside C.J. Pete housing development. Juvenile described it in one bar. On New Year's, the lights get shot out at 6 o'clock. By 4 or 5 in the morning, you are getting shot at. That was not a lyric. That was a schedule. The killings inside Magnolia were not random. They were territorial. Rival factions divided the buildings the way countries divide borders. You walked into the wrong stairwell, you did not walk out. A rapper named Magnolia Shorty was shot dead in her car in 2010, still unsolved. But the most disturbing detail about New Orleans in 1994 was not the kill count. It was who was doing the killing. The New Orleans Police Department officer Len Davis was running a protection racket for dealers from inside his patrol car. When a woman named Kim Groves filed a brutality complaint against him, Davis ordered her murdered. A federal wiretap recorded the order. She was dead within hours. The police were not just failing to stop the murders, they were committing them. 300 officers were fired, 1/5 of the entire force. 2 of those officers were later convicted of murder. The department that was supposed to protect the Magnolia was helping fill the body bags. Number 9. Queensbridge Houses, Queens, New York. 2,245 murders citywide in 1990. That was 6 murders every single day. 1 body every 4 hours for 365 consecutive days. Queensbridge is the largest housing project in America, with 3,000 apartments and 7,000 residents. During the late 1980s and early 1990s, it became an open-air market where product moved faster than the subway and bodies dropped faster than property values. Just blocks away, Howard Pappy Mason ordered the assassination of rookie NYPD officer Edward Barn, who was shot 4 times in the head while sitting alone in his patrol car at 3:15 in the morning. He was 22 years old, guarding a house. The order came from inside a jail cell. Fat Cat Nichols ran a $20 million a year empire out of a corner deli. The Supreme Team was pulling $200,000 a day from Baisley Park. Queensbridge existed inside a constellation of empires. Every direction you walked into somebody's territory. The elevators were ambush points. The stairwells were execution sites. Hallways were disputed borders. Residents learned to listen before opening their apartment doors, not for knocking, but for breathing on the other side. Naz grew up on the 7th floor. He wrote Illmatic about what it felt like to survive it. Mobb Deep wrote Shook Ones about the paranoia of knowing that any day could be the last one. These were not concept albums. They were survival reports set to a beat. In 2005, police dismantled the Dream Team, 37 members generating $10,000 a week from a single Queensbridge corner. One corner, $10,000 a week. Multiply that across 3,000 apartments, and you begin to understand why the kill count stayed so high for so long. Number 8, Cherry Hill, Baltimore. 353 murders citywide in 1993. 353, and only 32% were ever solved. That means 240 killers walked free. 2 out of every 3 murders in Baltimore that year, no arrest, no conviction, no consequence. Cherry Hill was built in the 1940s as one of the first planned black communities in Baltimore. By the 1980s, it was a heroin supermarket. Little Melvin Williams ran one of Baltimore's most powerful operations from the 1960s through the 1980s. David Simon based parts of The Wire on his story. Then, Williams himself appeared in the show as an actor. Nathan Bodie Barksdale was the real-life inspiration for Avon Barksdale. These men built the machine. Cherry Hill is where the machine's output was measured in caskets. Baltimore's murder rate during those years was 51 per 100,000. The national average was 9. Baltimore was killing its own people at 6 times the national rate. Then it got worse. After Freddie Gray died in police custody in 2015, the city erupted, 17 days of unrest, and the murder rate spiked. 344 dead in 2015, 318 in 2016, 342 in 2017, 312 in 2018, 4 years above 300. And Cherry Hill absorbed the worst of it every single time. The most disturbing fact about Baltimore is the cycle. The numbers go down, then they come back up. Every time. For 50 years. The most stubborn kill count in American history. Number 7. Mantua, West Philadelphia. 503 murders citywide in 1990. 503 murders in 1 year. Your city, your blocks. Many of you watching this grew up walking these streets. The Junior Black Mafia ran West and North Philadelphia during these years. Federal prosecutors called them one of the most dangerous organizations on the East Coast. Their enforcers moved through Mantua with total impunity. Witnesses refused to testify. Jurors were afraid to convict. Product was sold openly on the sidewalk, not in alleys, not behind closed doors, on the street, in daylight, with children walking past on their way to school. The dealers had more presence than the police, more authority than any elected official in the district. Police response times in Mantua during the peak years stretched past 30 minutes, half an hour between a 911 call and a cruiser showing up. In half an hour, a man can bleed out on the sidewalk. In half an hour, witnesses scatter. In half an hour, a crime scene becomes a cold case. And in Mantua during 1990, that happened 503 times. Studies on children who grew up in Mantua during the crack era found symptoms identical to combat veterans: post-traumatic stress, hypervigilance, insomnia, inability to concentrate. The government recognized these symptoms in soldiers and built hospitals to treat them. The children of Mantua received nothing. Number 6. Nickerson Gardens, Watts, Los Angeles. 2,189 murders citywide in 1992. That was the highest total in Los Angeles history, and Watts, specifically Nickerson Gardens, was the epicenter. Nickerson Gardens is the largest housing project west of the Mississippi, with over 1,000 units. It was the headquarters of the bounty hunter Bloods. Their war with the Grape Street Watts Crips from neighboring Jordan Downs lasted decades and produced hundreds of casualties. The crack epidemic that fueled the war did not arrive by accident. Freeway Ricky Ross was moving $3 million a day through South Central, supplied by Oscar Danilo Blandon, a Nicaraguan whose connections became the center of a CIA scandal. Stanley Tukey Williams had co-founded the Crips and built the infrastructure decades earlier. When crack arrived, the distribution network was already in place. All it needed was product cheap enough to sell to anyone. At its peak, Nickerson Gardens recorded a murder about every 2 weeks inside the complex. Police would not enter certain buildings without backup units. Ambulances refused calls after dark unless escorted by armed officers. The fire department would not respond to calls inside the project without police clearing the scene first. Residents who needed medical attention after sundown had to get themselves to the hospital or die waiting. The Watts Truce of 1992 briefly paused the killing. When it broke, the violence came back worse. The riots that followed the Rodney King verdict that same year killed 63 people in 6 days. But the slow-motion war inside Nickerson Gardens killed far more than 63. Nobody counted because nobody came to count. Number 5. North Philadelphia, the Badlands. 503 murders in 1990, 500 in 1997, 506 in 2022, 3 separate years above 500 murders. No other city on the East Coast has done that. The Badlands is a stretch of blocks between Kensington and North Philadelphia that operated as a 24-hour open-air market, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. No holidays, no breaks, no closing time. Caboni Savage operated out of North Philly in the 2000s. He firebombed a rival's family home at 4 in the morning. 4 children burned alive, 2 adults dead, 6 people total. He ordered the hit from inside federal prison using a smuggled cell phone. The Richard Allen homes were demolished starting in the late 1990s. The violence did not leave with the buildings, it just changed addresses. The difference between North Philadelphia and every other entry on this list is simple. North Philadelphia never stopped. New Orleans had post-Katrina. D.C. had the 2012 low. Detroit had years of decline. Philadelphia has been above 300 murders every single year since 1985, 4 decades straight. No pause, no dip, no recovery period, no break. Walk through the Badlands today. Abandoned row homes with boarded windows for blocks. Empty lots where buildings used to stand. Corner stores with bulletproof glass so thick you can barely hear the person on the other side. And on certain corners, the same activity that was happening in 1990 is still happening right now. The product changed. The method changed. The geography of death in North Philadelphia has not moved in 40 years. That is not an epidemic. That is a condition. Number 4. East St. Louis, Illinois. Murder rate over 100 per 100,000. A reporter drove through East St. Louis at noon and counted the streetlights. More than half were dark. Not broken, disconnected. The city could not pay the electric bill. East St. Louis has posted the highest per capita murder rate of any city in America in multiple years. Not among big cities, among all cities. Rates exceeded 100 per 100,000, higher than any war zone the United Nations has monitored in the last 30 years. The population collapsed from 80,000 to under 18,000. The tax base evaporated. The police department shrank to barely functional levels. Response time stretched past an hour. 60 minutes between a 911 call and a uniform at your door. Entire blocks went dark at night. No streetlights, no cameras, no witnesses. The fire department could not afford fuel for its trucks. Garbage was not collected for weeks. Schools ran out of supplies. The infrastructure of civilization disintegrated block by block. Into that vacuum stepped the only economy that does not require a resume, a credit check, or a diploma. The only structure still functioning in East St. Louis was the trade, and the kill count was the cost of doing business in a city that America decided was not worth saving. Number 3. Detroit. 714 murders in 1974, 418 in 2006, 300 or more nearly every year since 1967. And that was before crack even arrived. By the 1980s, Detroit was running multiple empires simultaneously. Butch Jones and Young Boys Incorporated used children as young as 8 as street dealers on the west side. Demetrius Holloway, the original Big Meech, and Maserati Rick Carter controlled the east side. The Chambers brothers ran 200 crack houses across Metro Detroit and recruited workers from the south to staff them. The Best Friends gang started as murder for hire, and their enforcer, Stacy Culbert, was linked to 13 killings alone. All of these empires operated at the same time. Same city, same decade, same neighborhoods. Police response times in some Detroit neighborhoods exceeded 1 hour. 60 minutes between calling 911 and seeing a uniformed officer. In 60 minutes, a man bleeds out. Evidence disappears. Witnesses scatter. The killer drives to another state. And then there was Devil's Night. Every October 29th through 31st, arsonists torched hundreds of buildings across Detroit. Hundreds! In a single weekend. The city deployed every available unit, and the fires still burned. One woman told a reporter she was a prisoner in her own house. She would not go outside for 3 days. Detroit has recorded fewer than 300 murders in only 4 years since 1967. 4 years out of nearly 60. For 6 decades, this city has averaged a body nearly every single day. Number 2. Washington, D.C. 482 murders in 1991. 6 consecutive years above 400. In the shadow of the United States Capitol, D.C. exceeded 400 murders for 6 straight years: 1988, 1989, 1990, 1991, 1992, and 1993. No other American city has matched that streak. The murder rate hit 80.6 per 100,000. The national average was 9 per 100,000. Rayful Edmonds supplied 60% of the city's product from Orleans Place in Northeast D.C. His strip ran like a drive-through. Cars pulled up, money in one window, product out the other, 24 hours a day. But Rayful was not alone. Alpo Martinez moved in from Harlem and brought Wayne Silk Perry, the man they called the Michael Jordan of the murder game. Perry killed in broad daylight and never said a word to police. Cornell Jones ran southeast. Michael Frey Salters controlled Sursum Corda. D.C. was not one war. It was 20 wars happening simultaneously within the same city limits. Every few blocks was another kingdom, another set of soldiers, another corner somebody was willing to die for. The Strip, D.C.'s largest open-air market, operated a few blocks from the Capitol building. Members of Congress drove past active transactions on their way to work. A quarter of juveniles arrested in 1988 tested positive for product. Children testing positive in the capital of the free world. During those 6 years, the United States was fighting the Gulf War. A black man in certain D.C. neighborhoods had a higher statistical probability of being murdered than a soldier deployed to the Persian Gulf had of dying in combat. The capital of the free world, the seat of American democracy, and for 6 consecutive years, the deadliest address in the Western Hemisphere. Number 1, New Orleans, the permanent murder capital. 35 years and counting. New Orleans is number 1 because it was never number 2. 421 murders in 1994. Then the city held the highest per capita murder rate in America in 2000, 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, 2010, and 2011. 11 out of 12 years as the deadliest city in the country. No other city has dominated the murder rankings for that long. Not D.C., not Detroit, not Baltimore, not Chicago. Nobody. Walter Waterbug Reed ran the Magnolia and Calliope Projects. The Slim and Soulja faction controlled the Ninth Ward. Isaac Ice Mike Mitchell pushed product through the Fisher Projects. Separate empires in a city of less than 500,000, each generating enough violence to qualify as its own regional crisis. In 2003, New Orleans had a murder rate of 58 per 100,000. New York City that same year had 7 per 100,000. New Orleans was killing its residents at 8 times the rate of the largest city in the country. After Katrina in 2005, the population dropped from 500,000 to under 200,000. The murder rate got worse. In 2006, the rate hit 70 per 100,000. The people who stayed were the ones who could not leave, and they died at rates that would trigger international intervention in any other country on Earth. Only 12% of murder suspects arrested between 2003 and 2004 were ever imprisoned. 12%. 88 out of every 100 people arrested for murder walked free. The system did not fail. It surrendered. Mailmen refused routes. Pizza drivers drew red lines on their maps. Ambulances waited for police escorts that sometimes never came. Mothers kept their children on the floor at night, below window level, because bullets came through the walls without warning. That was not a figure of speech. That was the nightly routine for thousands of families across the Ninth Ward, the Seventh Ward, the Magnolia, the Calliope, and the Fisher. In 2022, New Orleans recorded 77 murders per 100,000, approaching the 1994 record again. 28 years later, a new generation, same kill count. New Orleans is not a city that had a bad decade. It is a city that has been the murder capital of the Western Hemisphere for 35 years straight. The music is beautiful. The food is legendary. The culture is irreplaceable. And the body count is an American disgrace that nobody with the power to change it has ever tried hard enough to fix. 421 in 1 year, 11 years as number one, an 88% impunity rate. Police officers convicted of murder, ambulances that would not come, and a kill count that is still climbing right now as you listen to this. That is why New Orleans is number one. Not because of one bad year, because of 35 bad years and counting.